So good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for attending Voter Rights for People with Disabilities. And this morning we have Lacey Dawson and Tamika Spruce, so welcome. Just a couple quick reminders that closed captioning is provided. So if you clicked on closed captioning, then you're able to click on show subtitles. And then there's also 3 ways to ask questions. There's the Q&A window, there's the chat box that you're able to type in comments and questions, and then you're also able to use the raise hand function as well. And just so you know that the microphones will be on mute for the duration of the presentations, and then once it's time, we'll open it up for Q&A, and then you're able to ask your questions. All right, ladies, so welcome, and I'm going to turn it over to Tamika and Lacey.
And I really am happy to be partners in this fight with everyone that's on this live today, on this webinar, and really, again, hoping to continue to build power with you and also to partnerships. So just a little, want to give a little background while we're getting things set up, Tamika, and we can let everybody know. Yeah. What do you do, Tamika?
Yes, so I'm a disability justice activist. So I'm
okay.
Disabilities, but especially those who are people of color, you know, Black people with disabilities. Just a little description of myself. For those who may not be able to see me, I'm a brown-skinned woman with long black hair and wear the white shirt and white headphones, and I utilize a wheelchair. So excited to be here.
Great. Thank you. So I am kind of new to organizing in the community. So I think I'm going to follow Tamika's model. I'm an African-American woman. I work and have worked on a multitude of campaigns, my favorite being the Obama campaign in 2010, 11, and 12 as a regional field director, and then a volunteer in 2008. I have a curly hair depending on the day, because I'll switch out tomorrow with my favorite wig. Brown skin. I think I'm kind of cute, so I don't know. But I thank you for modeling that for me, Tamika. Now I understand, you know, how to properly activate in different communities. So thank you so much for always teaching. She's always teaching me something. I love it.
No problem.
Yeah, so we have the screen share is up and running, and we're going to definitely start with Tamika. Tamika, I'll be following your lead on the slides, so you just let me know when to switch, and hopefully you can see them.
Okay, so today we're going to give you a very comprehensive overview of voting as a person with disabilities and ways to, you know, increase access to voting as well. Next slide. So, you know, as a person with a disability, you know, I've been there, I've done that. I know how it is to, you know, go to the, you know, the polling location and not be accessible. Just this past election, I just voted absentee for the first time. So that was a good, you know, different, you know, experience. But like I said, I know, you know, as a person who utilizes a wheelchair, some of the challenges that there are voting. So like some of these I've experienced where I tried to use the machine and it wasn't working properly, and had to wait, you know, for them to try to figure out what's going on. And then also the privacy shield wasn't available once I decided just to vote manually. So that, you know, that's some of my experience. But I know some of the other experiences that people have is, you know, the polling location entryways aren't accessible. Uh, the voting machines, again, not working properly, and poll workers not know how to fix them. Poll workers are trained on disability etiquette. That was one thing I experienced as well. A poll worker trying to tell me about how I need to use a motorized wheelchair. Like, okay, that's not has anything to do with voting, but
Wow.
okay. And again, there isn't aren't any privacy shields, and I see all these things as violations to people with disabilities our rights to access, and I see that as a version of voter suppression because where our voices are not able to be heard fully. And then, how many people with disabilities experience these things and just choose not to vote. So they deter because of the experiences that they had, or they basically will just forget it, I won't vote. So that's, I definitely don't recommend doing that. But, that's a form of voting suppression. And many people, excuse my nose is running. Uh, Many people with disabilities experience various voting violations. One of them being um, the first blind Supreme Court Justice, Richard Bernstein. I have a link to the article. But basically, what happened to him is he tried to vote absentee, get an absentee ballot, and get assistance filling it out. But the poll workers there, didn't know the protocol or how to even give him the ballot, so they turned him away. And so that, that's Richard Bernstein. So nobody is, I would say nobody abstained and nobody with disability is, privileged to the point that, they'll have their voting rights, violated. So a few months later, the National Federation of the Blind forced the state of Secretary Justin Benson to provide accessible ballots online for blind and blind and deaf Michigan residents. And so I'm going to be speaking a little bit more about the case later. So I am a member of the People with Disabilities Voting Rights Coalition. It's a coalition comprised of Detroit Disability Power, Wars on Wheels, which I am a member and I do work for as well. Greater Detroit Agency of the Blind and Visually Impaired. And so we formed the Disability Rights Voter Rights Coalition. So in 2000, March 2019. And so we started to meet with the City of Detroit Department of Election staff to work on some of the issues that some of the voters in Detroit are experiencing. So because Detroit is a very, of course, a large city, and so there's a lot of difficulties. Like every election, there's something going on, and everything because it's such a huge city. So many people have difficulties, like I said, with voting, including those with disabilities. So this came about because in 2018, the elections for people with disabilities and others was really poorly ran. So we met with the city election staff, every month to, prepare them on some of the issues um, that people with disabilities were experiencing. So the way we did that is we had a survey. So every election we had a survey that was sent out for people to fill out. And so we created a graph of some of the issues that people with disabilities were experiencing. Can you click on the link?
Yes, let me do that.
Okay. And this graph going to show some of the issues. Is that?
It's not, it says I need access again.
Oh, okay. All right. Oh, man. Okay. So some of the issues, it's like what I described before. So, some of these, like people that have access to their voting, the entryways was blocked or were able to use. I know, if I remember, there was one particular location that still had stairs, even though we, as a group, we went with the staff to identify some of the spots that there were people at, some of the vote polling locations. We went to them and, evaluated them as far as their access, but still there was one particular location that still was, the entryways weren't good. Um, and like I said, some of the things like I mentioned before, people with disabilities, privacy, a common issue that many people are facing in Detroit, with disabilities and people, period. And I'm sure in other places as well, is that their polling location changes. And so they're not able, or they don't receive the change of the polling location. So they went to a location that they know of, and there's no voting there, and it's blocked, or and they don't know what's going on. And so that is a common experience that a lot of people with disabilities in Detroit face. So again, we met with them to how to make the voting machines accessible according to the law. We talked about training poll workers, hiring people with disabilities to be poll workers, and to train the poll workers, and making sure the machines, um, it works, and or if it's not working, how to quickly fix it. So that's what we talked about over the course of the year with the City of Detroit elections. Next slide. So with the recent elections, um, it was still were some issues like in March and the most recent primary in August, unfortunately. But we just gotta keep at it. We just have to keep contacting the election staff, and I know one of these we're doing as a coalition and having a Know Your Rights seminar coming up in October to educate people with disabilities. So we just have to keep holding our city clerks more accountable, and that is by if you experiencing various voting rights violations like I just mentioned today. Um, contact your city clerk. You can always start your own group or participate in the voting rights organization to advocate for that vote, like advocate for people with disabilities. If your voting rights are seriously and continuously violated, and you can prove the systematic oppression, you can always do like what the visually blind and visually challenged community did by suing, um, because they are supposed to, and I forgot the law that passed, but polling locations has to be accessible. It's a must. And certain things is a must. So if they're not doing that, then you do have grounds to sue. A little bit about the case that the National Federation of the Blind, if you can click on that link.
Yes. And if someone can mute themselves, if possible, please.
Yeah, I think that might be my son.
Oh, no problem.
He
No
is like,
problem. Can you see the slide now?
yeah. I don't know why he turned up the TV blasting. So I'm sorry about that. I'll try
That's
to.
okay. So is the article showing for you?
No, it's not.
Okay, 1 second. Let me get that.
Okay.
And here we go. It's coming up now. Here you go.
Okay. So we can scroll down a little bit.
Mhm.
So this is the case that I was mentioning, and you can follow up with the National Federation Blind about this particular case. But so what they did again, they sued, you know, the judge put it onto the elections in the state of Michigan with Jocelyn Benson and say you must provide access, equal access to voting for blind and the deaf and blind community. So what they did is that the state of Michigan put in the same system that people overseas the process of their voting. So you can go online and fill out an electronic ballot and fill it out and then print it up and then mail it. And so that's the way the blind community and the deaf blind community can vote. And I believe as other people with disabilities can vote this way as well. But like I said, just contact the local office, National Federation of Blind, to ask them this question. But this is really a moving forward point because now people who are blind don't have to go through the hassle of going to their polling locations and it's changed and things like that and everything. So or asking someone to fill out the absentee ballot. So this is a really great opportunity right now.
Great. Thank you.
Yes.
Tamika.
And I'm gonna tell my son too. Well, I'm done now. I mute myself. I'm gonna tell my son also to turn down the TV. So I
Not a problem.
apologize.
Take your time. Not a problem. If there's not a child or a cat or dog in a Zoom video, I don't feel comfortable. So I'm glad that your son showed up because I was like, wait a minute, no cattail in the video. So yeah, we'll take care of that. Are there any questions for Tamika? Thank you so much for Tamika for always providing great insight and all of the work that you all are doing to ensure that elections are made accessible for everyone in the community. So are there any questions? You can type in the chat and we can definitely handle those.
Yeah, so Lacey, this is Tracy, and there is a question in the chat. It says, do we know, T. Devon asks, do we know how polling places will handle the COVID issue?
Yes, and we're gonna go through that during my section of the presentation and really dive deep into everything we need to get prepared for. But there are some things that we need to be made aware of and things that we need to demand. So we definitely will be getting into that. Thank you.
Okay, great. And then the other question for the article that you had just put up on the screen, could we put that article link in the chat?
I can get that for you, right? Yeah, or Tamika, do you think you can post the article in the chat while I do my section of the presentation? Perfect, Tamika's gonna handle that.
All right, great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Tamika, did you want to cover any additional?
No, I could just answer questions at the end because you're gonna handle perfectly the COVID thing. So yeah.
All right. So I'm moving right along, and please feel free to ask as many questions as you have on your mind, because a lot of times we don't think of everything when we're putting these slides together. But again, my name is Lacey. I work for the ACLU. I'm excited to be here with you today. We have an obligation and an opportunity coming up in November, but we have a lot of obstacles that have been put in place. And for our communities, it's really ensuring and making sure everyone has good information, and that we're pushing our leaders, our Secretary of State's offices, those that work in nonprofit communities, those who are really care about this election cycle, that we're pushing them to have all of the tools in the toolbox that we need, those that we know of and those that we do not. And so one of the things I want to say is that we as a community have to continue to build our confidence and the confidence of our constituents about the state of democracy in this country. And you know, make the and let folks know that we are the community and we have the ability to make that needed change. So there's a lot of fear mongering that is happening about November. Lots of people are either afraid that the system is going to implode and are giving up, saying it's going to implode, so why do I need to participate? And then there are others that, you know, say it's not going to implode, but I'm afraid that the results won't be what I want. But we're going to get exactly what we need when we activate our right to vote and to steer this country to be what it actually is meant to be. So what is happening in the space, and what are two of the most important components that we are working on as the ACLU of Michigan and with a lot of partner organizations across the state, is that we got to do two very crucial things. We have to do public education, and we also have to engage our local clerks' offices. The local clerks actually have their own independence inside of the state of Michigan's system. Our Secretary of State is definitely over the system, but each individual clerk, and there are thousands of local clerks, can run their offices in the way that they see fit. They do due diligence with what is happening in their communities. And sometimes it misses the mark and sometimes it doesn't. And so at the ACLU, what we're doing is we have a clerk engagement program where organizations and community leaders are meeting with each local clerk, asking very specific questions, making certain that things that need to be in place are in place. And if they are not, having sessions to hold individuals accountable and to ensure that those things are taking place. For instance, this actually happened maybe about a week or two ago. The Flint clerk's department had not opened since COVID initially hit. So they had thousands of ballots that were sitting, waiting to be counted. And the clerk actually refused to open her office because she was afraid of COVID, which is valid, but at the same time, we're running an election here. So the ACLU was successful in taking her to court and making some demands and also providing some support. What do you need in order to actually be able to function accordingly in your department? If that is you need volunteers, let folks know so we can get you volunteers. If you need some additional funding, let folks know so that you can get some additional funding. So it's not just a blame game, it's a, hey, we see there's an issue and let us all as community help you fill that gap. So the local engagement piece I think is crucial, and I know Tamika and the folks that she's working with are consistently working with us, specifically the City of Detroit clerk and others, to make sure that when we are engaging and having these elections go forward, that all the tools that are needed are in place. And if not, they know that someone is coming to ask that question, that it will not go unnoticed. The second very important component is public education. Public education. And so with public education, we have not sometimes because we know not. And so it's all of us, each one, reach 20, reach 30, reach 40 folks to pass along the information needed. The questions that people have, we need to be answering those and educating people as to up-to-date information on what is happening inside of the space. I see a question. Cindy Barcombe has asked a question. Who all would be the best to contact with those needs? So you can contact a couple of individuals, definitely the ACLU. I'll put in the chat my email, and I can get that to the department that is working on that. You are also, Tamika, if you could type in the chat your email address, and then there's a website that goes to a group of attorneys that is working on these issues as well. And that website is michiganvoting.org. And then there's also 866-our vote, and we'll talk about these also later on. It's a number where attorneys are, currently it's a live number where attorneys are fielding any questions and any concerns that constituents have about the election. So you have Tamika's information that's coming up in the chat. You have my email, and I will get that over to attorneys that we work with. You have michiganvoting.org, and you have 866-our vote. So we have a number of places that you can get that information. Hopefully that was helpful, Cindy. And if not, let us know. We'll try to fill additional needs. So, you know, I talked about us building our confidence in time of uncertainty. I will say that our Secretary of State probably is one of the best in the country, and that she, along with partnering with a whole lot of organizations across the state, are working diligently. They're making phone calls to voters who have low propensity scores, meaning they are less likely to turn out. Our Secretary of State, you know, has done things that have been a little, a lot phenomenal, sending out absentee ballots to everyone across the state. So our confidence should be in that we have a Secretary of State that is very friendly to the needs of voters. The other thing is that voters can track the status of their absentee ballots, and that is, to me, a crucial tool. If I put it in the mail, and we'll talk about mail a little bit, but if I put it in the mail, I want to make sure that it was delivered, and I also want to make sure that it's counted. And so if you look here, you see that there's a website, mvic.sos.state.michigan.mi.us, and I'll type that here because that is a lot of dots and acronyms. If you visit that site there, and if you type Secretary of State track ballot, it'll come up as well, but you can track your ballot to make certain that it's being counted, because a lot of people they do not normally vote absentee. Prop 3 gave us the ability, and we won a phenomenal, we had a phenomenal win with having the ability to vote absentee without an excuse. But we also want to make certain that once we do that, that vote is being counted. So you can definitely get that information there at that website. And then I also want to say, like, let's keep our information very trustworthy and positive. And T. Devin, no, it is not too late to vote absentee. We are prepping for our election in November, our general election in November. So we will be talking about that time deadline really, really soon in some of these slides. But we want to make certain, though, if you're hearing negative information, you want to refute that information, and you want to give the proper information, because we know there's an echo chamber. Negative information gets out there and people run with it like it's gold. Let's make sure we're fact checking, contacting the ACLU, contacting the League of Women Voters, and making certain that this information is trustworthy. And if it's not, let's refute it on every channel that we can, whether it's our social media, phone calls, in person, making certain that we protect and have confidence in our elections. So I see that Sarah asked the question, what about the Women League of Voters? Yes, the League of Women Voters is part of one of the nucleuses of our organizing, and they're definitely on the team, even leading in certain spaces with some of our subcommittees, definitely. I know Betsy and a bunch of folks over there work very closely with them. I had stated earlier, you know, if you have problems voting, here's the voter hotline again, and it is in Spanish as well. Give them a call if you want to see how it works. Ask a question. They are still recruiting attorneys from the state of Michigan to assist and to be able to answer a whole boatload of questions. If you'd like an attorney to actually come and speak to your organizations, they will also do that. So definitely be using that number. So let's look at the timeline. I think this gets to the question that T. Devin was asking. So if you look at this timeline, starting 75 days before the election, and our election is November the 3rd, Tuesday, November the 3rd, 75 days before the election, we can start requesting our absentee ballot application. So we will be applying to receive a ballot. You get that absentee ballot application in the mail, you fill that thing out, make sure you sign it the same way you sign your driver's license or voter ID card, etc., so that they can do the comparison and make certain that you are indeed who you say you are. But we can start collecting that information or getting those applications in to us, actually now, as of today, the 20th, we can start requesting the application for a ballot. 45 days before the election, we can apply and vote. So we can begin to vote 45 days before the election. We don't have to wait till November. We don't have to wait till September. We can start voting now. So folks need to know that. The weekend before the election, according to the law, this is law because of Prop 3, clerk's offices across the state, it's a mandate that they are open 8 hours the weekend before the election. That's not normally the case, but now because of the law, in Michigan, every clerk's office is required to be open 8 hours the weekend before the election. The next really, really great part of Prop 3 is that voters can register to vote at the clerk's office on the day of the election up until 4 p.m. So people who need to register to vote, they can register to vote at the clerk's office. Now that's different from your polling location or the precinct. You have to go to the clerk's office to register to vote on election day if needed. And then lastly, on election day, only voters who need to register to vote or update their address can vote at the clerk's office. The rest of us have to make certain to go to our polling locations and our precincts to vote. But if you are registering or need to update your address, you can again go to the clerk's office. So are there any questions about this timeline, encouraging individuals that they can get their vote done 45 days before the election? We don't have to wait. We understand what's on the ballot now. We're going to a general election. So we really can go ahead and get our votes in as quickly as possible, starting in 45 days outside the election. So any questions before we move on to the next section? Could you send a link that we can use for the timeline? I think we could just get these slides over to you all, or at least this slide, Cindy, if you would like. I can get it to Tracy, and she can get it out to those on the call. Would that work?
Yes, actually, and the recording of today's webinar, along with the PowerPoint slides, will be available on DDI's website, and I will post that link in the chat box.
Mm-hmm. And this actually is also on the michiganvoting.org website. And if your organization is interested, there will be Know Your Rights guides that are being printed that will be helpful also to individuals on the call. So trying to get a lot of resources out there. And if your group says, hey, none of that stuff works and we need something else, let us know so that we can go out there and potentially get that for you if we can. I know, we may need some things in Braille. I'm not sure who's doing that, but if it's needed, let's go for it. Let's get it. There are no excuses in 2020. Let's make it happen. Okay, and yes, I can get this. I will definitely get it to you, Cindy. It's not a problem. I'll do that screenshot right now.
Lacey, we have a question from Karen. She asked, you mean the clerk at county building to register?
So there are a couple of different clerks. So you have your county clerk. No, you have to go to your actual city clerk's department. And it depends on where you live. So in Detroit, because we have both the county and the city clerk in our space, our votes need to go to our city clerk. The county clerk actually does the behind the scenes, making sure that all of the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, and she officially mandates or officially says this is the vote count. You would need to go to your city clerk's office for that voter registration the day of. Okay. And Cindy, I will get that slide to you. I did take a screenshot of it and can get that in the chat, I think, some kind of way. All right, any other questions? Okay, moving right along. So the good news is everyone in Michigan can vote absentee, and we have to get used to and ready to use the system. So the instructions for vote by mail is that the Secretary of State has sent everyone the application. If you got the application in the mail and you actually checked the box during the primary saying that you wanted to receive an absentee ballot for the November election, you will get that ballot also. Most of us didn't. I know I didn't. So I now have to apply for my ballot again. If a voter has not received their application for their absentee ballot, they haven't gotten it in the mail, they can download that form by going to michigan.gov/SOS, or again, you can go to your local clerk's office. If you're looking to find your local clerk's office, visit that Secretary of State's website. All the information we need is on there, but michigan.gov/vote or that mvic.sosstate.mi website as well. You can find out who is your local clerk. I think all of us need to have our local clerk's email address, our local clerk's phone number, and our local clerk's websites programmed somewhere in our vicinity so that we can get to it at the drop of a dime. Because when issues happen, they are our first person that we're supposed to contact. If we can't get through, then we take it up the chain of command to either the ACLU, Tamika's group, or someone who can answer those questions. So if you have not gotten it in the mail, and is there anyone on the call, if you could type in chat that if you did not get your absentee ballot application, if you could let us know, and let us know your name and where you live so that we can check into your clerk's office to see why did you not receive that information. Now, COVID is having a horrible impact on our elections, and I think that we can take a moment or two to talk about that. You know, it is great that we have a Secretary of State that has said that they are not going to close every polling location in the state no matter what, that we will remain open and practice social distancing and have PPE, etc. on tap for the upcoming election. With that being said, though, there is a dire need for poll workers. Normally, poll workers are senior citizens who have done this and want to protect voting rights and have done it for years. But because of COVID, a lot of the people who normally volunteer, because actually the pay is not that much, you actually are probably volunteering, you're working the whole day for like $100 and something. These individuals have said that they're not going to work, and a lot of them didn't show up during the primary. So if you have young people that are interested in working on election day, we need to encourage them to actually apply. They can go to michiganvoting.org and fill out, it's not an application, but fill out an interest form to say they're interested, because that is where the hiccup definitely will be. Not having enough people to run the election and not having enough people in the back room actually counting the actual votes, both that were tabulated by the machine, and there's going to be millions and millions and millions of pieces of mail that are going to be coming through the system that will need to be tallied. The envelopes need to be open. Two envelopes need to be open. They need to be unfolded, and then they need to be put in buckets to be counted and placed in a machine. We're going to need folks to actually help do that. So if you're recruiting or want more information or want to get involved in that subcommittee, type it in the chat. Let Tamika know, let myself know, so that we can get you onto that team that's going to help eliminate that disparity inside of that system. So let's make certain that we can go over the rest of the instructions for voting by mail. You know, once you have secured your application, make sure you sign it and get it back as soon as possible. We are having some issue with sending things in the mail. They are turning up late. It's, you know, there had been some debacle with the person or individual who was placed over our post office. Over the last few days, they have said that some of the disparities or obstacles that he has placed in front of us are being eliminated, but we want to make certain that no matter what, our ballots get to the place that they need to go. And so we are saying to individuals, get that information in early, early, early. You will hear me say that consistently on this webinar. And if possible, take it to the drop boxes, and we'll talk about drop boxes soon. But once you sign that ballot, you're going to get application and get that ballot back immediately. Make certain you are pushing that ballot back out. And this year, also make certain that you're putting your name on that absentee voter list, so you automatically get that absentee ballot application in the mail. You don't have to wait for it during your next local election or elections post this election. Really quickly, voter registration. Any questions about the absentee ballot application? Because I feel like I'm rushing a little bit, and I want to make certain we're covering what you need to know. Any additional questions? And I don't see anything in the chat. Great. Let me ask a question of you all. Did anyone have any voter suppression or any difficulty voting in the primary election this past August? Was it August the 4th? Anyone have any issues, or everything went fine? All right, we must be doing something right. Okay, so voter registration. If you are over the age of 18, or will be 18 by the time of the election, and you're a United States citizen, and you're not currently serving a sentence in jail or prison, you can register to vote. Now, individuals who have served their time, who are on parole, who are at home and not behind bars, or who are awaiting sentencing, meaning they have not been given a, you're going to be locked up in jail between this date and this date. If they're awaiting sentencing, they can vote. They can register and they can vote. We have a couple of groups that are working to get inside of jails and prisons to make certain that they are allowed to register and vote for the upcoming election. So if you know of anyone who's a returning citizen, make certain that they know that they can vote. The reason that the narrative is out there is a couple of things. Some parole officers don't know the rules, so they've given misinformation. And then when you're in prison, or if you share a cell with someone who's from another state, that indeed could be the law in that state. But in Michigan, once you are free to vote. So Max's question is, what if they're scheduled for release prior to the election? If they're scheduled for release and they get out prior to the election, they can get out on November the 3rd. They can go to their clerk's office and register to vote, and they can vote that day. They can vote that day. So yes, if they're out before, even on that day, they can vote. Does that answer your question, Max? So Cindy said, what if they don't have a residence? They would need to have a residence or some type of identification, or some type of way to say where they are going to have residence. So hopefully before they are released, that has been secured. They don't have to have an ID or a state ID or anything like that, but they would need something like a utility bill, a bank statement, or other government documents. So when you're released from prison, my understanding is you would have some kind of document that says that, and it should have an address of where you're going to be residing. They need to be using that. The Secretary of State's office is implementing, we're not sure of the timeline, but they are going to implement the process of when you're released from prison, you get an identification card, because that is one of the things that is holding a lot of people up. We're doing some research to see when that is going to actually be implemented, but that will be a great and a major help to helping folks on their way to freedom, and also on their way to actually being able to activate their right to vote. So hopefully that answers the question, Cindy. Most of the time, and I know my brother's a returning citizen, and I have a couple of other folks that I know, they actually know where they're going to be residing when they are signing their documents to leave the prison door. So they will have some address that they could definitely use. So hopefully that's helpful. But again, none of us have to show ID at the polls. A lot of times they ask us. You don't have to show it. You can sign an affidavit saying you are who you say you are. If you're pre-registered, But if you're registering, you're going to need to show some kind of evidence of where you reside. And it doesn't have to be a physical piece of identification. It could be a utility bill again, a bank statement, paycheck, government check, or other document with your name and address on it. What is also great is newly registered voters can vote absentee at their polling place on election day or at the clerk's office. That was not normally the case. Normally, actually that was normally the case. I'm sorry, let me take that back. If you're a newly registered voter, you can vote absentee by taking your ballot into the polling location or clerk's office on election day, because they will identify who you are that day. Normally, the reason that a newly registered voter, let's say a person filled out a voter registration application at the county fair, they are not required to show that individual or that volunteer their ID. But in order to vote absentee, they have to go in person to prove who they are. So, for instance, if they registered at the county fair and they said they were Mickey Mouse, and they go to vote, well, they're going to want you to prove that you're a Mickey Mouse when you actually go vote in for absentee on election day. So that's just a fail-safe to make sure that there's no voter fraud. And then lastly, with this slide, it says military and overseas civilian voters have additional options to register. So they've given them additional options, and visit the website for more information. The other thing is, you know, we can register online to vote now, so let all the young folks know that they can register online. The only catch is that you have to have an ID number, whether it's your state ID or your driver's license, but they don't have to fill out a sheet of paper. If you have your ID and you are not registered to vote in Michigan, we have online voter registration. And yes, I'm going to mention the same website, mvic.sos.state.mi.us/register to vote. So that is a lot of convenience for a lot of individuals who don't want to get out during COVID and actually register to vote. If they have an ID, they can do it online. And our students, what is the online registration deadline? That is a great question. You would probably, let me get back to you, Cindy. I'm going to actually text someone and ask them that during questions, but I want to say it's probably the week before, because you have to go through the process of processing that registration and it getting to the appropriate place for you to actually vote. So Sarah has a question. Why don't you do the way I did? When I was going through high school graduation, before school, we were dismissed from school. I filled it out and been registered ever since, and I keep it current with changing my, yes. It would make sense, Sarah, but you know, in this country, there's this thing called voter suppression, and all rules don't apply in all areas. It would make sense that when a person will turn 18, they were automatically registered to vote. It's just not here in Michigan. We would have to change, thank you, Cindy, we would have to change our constitution our state constitution in order to make that happen. There are some groups that are talking about changing some of the voter suppression tactics and some of the laws so that it's much easier to vote. So you automatically get registered to vote when you turn 18. Some states have it where you automatically get a ballot. Everyone gets a ballot in the mail, no matter what. That's going to take a constitutional amendment. So Sarah, get ready and maybe even work with some of the groups that are working on those issues moving forward. It'll probably take 2 to 4 years to make those changes. And it would have to be a referendum of the voters that will make it happen. So hopefully that was helpful. And Cindy, I think it might be 15 days before, but again, I'm not sure. So I'll get that information to Tracy so that we are sure and firm in our assessment of that. And the last thing, you know, students, I feel so bad for all of the youth this year that are going to school. It is just the craziest time ever with COVID. They can register to vote with the address of where they either are residing on campus, or they can continue to vote at the address where they live with their parents. They just can't do both. So they can make that decision.
We have a question.
Yes, go for it.
Question, what if your license is not fully reinstated yet? Officially it has, but Secretary of State Department has not updated.
Okay, so let me make certain that I'm clear. You have applied to have your address updated on your license, but you haven't gotten the official notification by Secretary of State. What I would do is to contact the clerk's office where I was last registered to see if I'm still on their poll books. If they say no, then the address that I'm currently using, I would contact that clerk to make sure I'm on their poll books, because that's where the problem is going to be, is which poll book are you on? So when you go in and they're looking in the book, if you're not in there for your old address, then you go to the new place. But you need to do that research prior to, or contact the Secretary of State's office and see where's stuff. Right now with COVID, everything's kind of up in the air. Staff is working from home and remotely and etc. So you just got to do a little bit of research to see where they have you on the poll books.
Lacey, the specific question was, the address is fine, but their license was revoked.
Oh, then you can still vote. You just can't drive. You can still vote. You're looking at the address. Your right to drive has nothing to do with your right to vote. So and trust me, I know, because my license had been revoked or suspended for non-payment of tickets, but I'm still allowed to, it's not today, but I was still allowed to vote. As long as my address is the same, it's current, you're fine.
Thank you. And one more question.
Sure.
I would like to know, due to the unpredictability of the post office, who could drop off a person's ballot at the clerk's office?
That's a difficult one. Most clerks will not accept someone else to handle your ballot. Yeah.
I had a suggestion that my husband asked, and this would be a good question for you. What if you have like a proxy? So someone that you have identified to turn in, you like to jump off your ballot at the ballot box.
So
Do you have like a proxy?
Legally, someone, it said, the Max said it says on the ballot that someone who lives with you could drop it off. Now, I've been in clerk's offices where folks were trying to turn in ballots for their parents and they would not accept them because they don't want everyone handling everyone else's ballot. A proxy or someone who is your legal proxy, yes, but random folks turning in ballots, they really, really, really kind of shy away from that. Max, where do you live, if you don't mind me asking? Kalamazoo. Okay, I'm gonna check into that too, because we just met about this yesterday. Our assessment is that, because we have groups that want to go around and collect everyone's ballots and turn them in. You can't do it. Legally, you cannot do that. And that will be the same in the case of someone just taking my ballot and turning it in for me. Not supposed to do that. So yeah, I'll check into that and we will get that question definitely answered. But the answer that I know for sure is no one's supposed to be really handling it. So because of the post office, we got to get it in early, 40 days early, right? Well, let's get it in 40 days early and it'll make its way through there, and tracking it to ensure that it got where it needs to go. Are there any additional questions, Mary?
Not in the Q&A, and I see no raised hands. Okay. You addressed, we just got another one in the chat box. Are signatures checked against your original registration signature, and how can you check to determine how you originally signed?
Yeah, yes, and yes. And it's so funny because Shelley Weinsberg, who is the director over my department, did everything she was supposed to do, turned her ballot in, and they sent it back, or they actually didn't send her the ballot back. They sent her a message saying your ballot is not valid because your signatures don't match. So they are actually checking signatures. You would check it against either your driver's license. So the way that you signed your driver's license, they ask you to sign it twice. Make sure you sign it that way. And usually you sign your, or should have signed your voter registration the two signatures on your voter registration the same way as your driver's license. But they are checking them. I don't know exactly how, but they are checking them, and they are denying or invalidating certain, if your signatures don't match. They are doing it.
All right, Lacey, we have one raised hand, Karen Eberhardt. I'm going to, Karen, allow you to talk, and your mic will be open so you can ask the question. Go ahead, Karen. Just click unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, they already sent me, the absentee ballot. I signed the wrong side, but then crossed it out and signed the correct side. And I would obviously be waiting to have it come back in the mail to do a vote in, mail-in vote. But it sounds much easier to do the computer vote online. And once I've done this absentee ballot, is it going to disqualify me from being able to simply just vote online and forget about doing it, through the mail? Because if the mail's so slow, can you switch gears? Once you start one way, are you forced to stay that direction, or can you switch to online vote?
You are not forced to stay one way or the other. So, and I want to make sure I'm processing this thought correctly. So you've gotten your absentee ballot application because you haven't gotten a ballot yet. They haven't started sending out ballots yet. And you sent that in, but you want to change the way that you're processing your vote. You can go in and vote in person, but you have to let them know. And they'll ask you, and they'll be checking. They'll look and say, well, we sent you an absentee ballot. So and then they'll say, you're going to have to spoil your absentee ballot, meaning they're going to void that one out. And then they're going to assign you a new number and all that little fancy stuff to vote in person. So a lot of people had sent their ballots in, and they didn't believe that they had made it to the clerk's office in time. So they went on election day, and they said, spoil my ballot, the one that is in the mail somewhere, and I'm voting in person. And you actually get a chance to vote there in person that day, and they do not count the ballot.
But what if you want to vote online? What if you want to vote online and not in person?
We don't have an online voting system at all. There's no voting online at all.
Yeah, it's just with the.
Okay, so show up in person.
Yep, in the mail or in person.
Yeah. I was saying with the online voting, the electronic ballot, if there's a confusion with the blind and deaf and blind, but you have to print it up and then mail it. So, so it's not like you go on there and you can vote electronically. It's not like that. You just fill out the ballot electronically, and then you print it up and then you mail it. But I definitely would check if you're interested in doing it that method, if you're blind or deaf blind, or I think because my contact with NFB, they said that there's something that people with disabilities can do as well. So if that's the case, if I was you, I'd just contact the NFB office, your local office, and check with them to make, to confirm it. But that's the way you fill it out online, you print it up, and then you turn it in.
Okay, Lacey, we have a couple more questions.
Okay.
Barbara has her hand raised. So Barbara, I'm going to allow you to speak. And what you'll need to do is just click your mic so you can speak. And so you unmute yourself. And then you can ask your question, Barbara.
What is the difference between absentee ballot and the new mail-in vote? The new receive your ballot by mail. Do they just send out those without request?
So, Barbara, there's actually no difference. And so let me make certain that I'm walking through the system correctly in that. And if you all don't understand, make me slow down and make me explain it again, because that's what I'm saying. So all of the ballots are at the clerk's offices ready to be sent out or ready to be sent to a polling location. So the ballots are ready with all of our elected or politicians on it that we need to vote for. We can request that they actually send that ballot to our home as opposed to me coming to do it in person. So it's the same ballot. It's just I'm saying to them, hey, send me one in the mail instead of me coming down. I'm going to vote absentee. I will not be in person with you. So when you get that ballot in the mail, it should be the same ballot that you would get when you go to vote in person, meaning the same information should be on that. It should not be what they call what is that other ballot called? There's another ballot that they have that if they're not sure, can't prove who you are, they have you to vote with a yellow ballot. It should not be that. You will have the same ballot that you get in person. If you go, it's the same thing as what you get in the mail. So there is no difference except that, you're having them mail it to you. You're requesting that they mail it to you.
Yes, but I want to know on a new mail ballot things. Is there a difference between the new mail ballots? Are they requested?
No, there should be no difference.
Okay.
No difference at all.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, hopefully that was helpful, but no, there should be no difference at all.
All right.
All right, we're going to mute you again, Barbara, and allow Tamika to answer a question from the Q&A.
Perfect. Tamika.
Question is, how do I get a proxy?
Oh, and Tamika, I think, stepped away. So maybe we can come back. Was there another question after that one we can answer and then Tamika will come back?
Nope, the person indicates that's their last question.
Okay, when Tamika comes back, we'll definitely queue her up to answer that. I'm not familiar with what the process is in getting a proxy, and she would definitely be.
Okay, and then we have a couple in the chat, starting with Max. Want to look at that one. I emailed the Kalamazoo clerk yesterday to ask if my August ballot was accepted because I wasn't 100% sure my signatures matched. Due to the fact that I submitted my registration shortly after a legal name change and wasn't sure if I'd settled into my new signature yet. They said it was accepted and they would have contacted me if it wasn't. I'm sure not every clerk is that good, but it was reassuring.
That's excellent to hear that the Kalamazoo clerk, which is a smaller, clerk, is actually following through with those things. I would say, Max, let's do an experiment and go on that website and check to see how your ballot went through that process. I think that would be an interesting little project there. But all clerks are not going to be that good. Some of them, they're hiring folks and folks are not necessarily that accurate, but that's good to hear that in Kalamazoo they are doing that and that they had accepted it. If we had not gotten word that one of the employees at the ACLU's signature got kicked back, and that was very early on to the election. It was like she sent it in and 3 days later. She lives, I think, in St. Clair Shores. They kicked it back almost immediately. So I think it does depend on the clerk.
And then one more question in the chat. I didn't realize that registering at age 18 had to be in the Michigan Constitution.
Yeah. And so you'll see different organizations running ballot initiatives and referendums where they have to get 400,000 signatures of voters in order to make changes. And yeah, that's usually what that's about. They raise the money to get the printing done, to get 400,000 voters to say we want change in our Constitution. That's a lot of work. But yeah, that's how it's done.
And Sarah also has her hand raised. Sarah, you can unmute yourself and answer that or ask that question.
I just didn't realize that because that's the way it happened with me. As after we went through our graduation ceremony, they apparently got some voter applications and we're handing them out to everybody. I didn't realize it had to be in the Constitution.
Well, the Constitution said that you can register to vote at 18. Now, how you do that is not in the Constitution.
Okay.
Yeah, so when I mentioned the Constitution, I said maybe change it so that you're automatically registered at the age of 18, as opposed to having to go through any paperwork. Just, I'm 18. Everybody for their birthday should get a voter registration card in the mail, but they won't change. They won't change that unless we make a big stink about it and change the Constitution.
Okay, I'm the one that typed that.
I got it. Thank you. Thank you so much. I got it now.
Okay, and then we have Tamika's back. Do we want to revisit the proxy? How do I get a proxy question?
Yes, Tamika. May have a question on how they can get proxy. Do you know the process for that?
Unfortunately, no, I do not. We're trying to figure it out as well. So that's why I asked you, Lacey,
Okay.
that you know about the proxy, because I'm not for certain.
Okay, so I think Tracy and Mary and everyone on the call, and Tamika, if you would allow, I think what I want to do is to push the ACLU to do a maybe a 1 or 2 page Q&A form to answer some of these like little nuanced questions. And so Tamika, if you would work with me on getting with Sharon and some of the other attorneys and putting together the questions that people have and that you may have and others, and so we can get that printed and ready for the community, I think that would be great, because they're doing the Know Your Rights guys, but there's some other little nuanced stuff that we haven't pulled forward. Is that okay, or do you know if someone's already working on that?
No, I've involved a lot of groups and nobody knows. So yeah,
Well,
we're gonna be in a position.
We're gonna get it done, and we can provide it to everyone.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna finish up. I think I have a few more slides. Could people ask their clerk? Cindy is saying, oh, people ask their clerk about proxy. Potentially, I think that would be, and we will make sure we will get that guide out, because I think that these questions are definitely need to be answered and answered by an attorney. I am not an attorney, by an attorney that has looked at the law. The one around handling the ballots, we've been going back and forth on because there's a little ambiguity with it, but most folks, the clerks are saying, no, we're not taking it. Some clerks are like, not touching it. Let me see your ID when you turn in the thing, not touching it and turning folks away. And then if we need to, we would need to sue those clerks that are doing it improperly. But we gotta hurry up and get that done. All right, so a couple more slides. So straight party voting. So they're taking it away and we got it back. So you can vote straight ticket, straight party. Now on your ballot, if they tell you you can't, they're not telling the truth, and you need to bring that up, but your ballots will have a straight party voting on it. And then the last couple of slides. So here are the resources that we talked about with the websites and what you can do. Michigan voting, mi.gov/vote, all these websites. Then you have michiganvote.org, and let's just talk just a little bit. This is where I get into the emotional side of this. This is the final slide for me or whatnot. In order for us to win this thing, in order for us to do what needs to get done, it's gonna take all of us. I don't care. It doesn't matter if you know this information, if you don't know this information, if you care about what's gonna happen in November, everybody has to be on this campaign. Everyone, everybody gotta do something. And, you know, people say, well, what can I do? Well, you can volunteer. You all know people in your community, your neighbors, your friends, your trusted allies. We have to make certain that everybody's doing something. take a hold of some portion of this problem and put your effort and energy into it. Change starts with 1 or 2 people. And if all of us are doing something, then change will happen. So I just want to just really push you all and ask you to just be part of the process. Help us to make sense out of all of this. Encourage and make certain that we are coming up with the solutions that need to be came up with, that we're not invisibilizing people and not hearing everybody's voices, because the election will go on without a lot of us if we aren't screaming and hollering and raising our hands and making demands and making it so that people make the changes that we need. So, you know, Tamika is the leader in this fight, and I'm working behind her and to get everything that everyone needs in place. We have a little under 80 days to go, and we need to put the pedal to the metal and leave it all on the field as much as we can to get there. And I think under some really great leadership, we can make it happen. We have one more question. It says, with the same day voting, how does same day voting work with absentee? Go in, the person just goes in and votes on that day. You know, we get the term absentee voting. It's starting to confuse people. It's voting and voting. Let me make sure I'm saying this right. With same day voting, how does same day voting work with absentee? You have to go in. You don't have any time to mail it in. So absentee voting on election day is basically voting in person. That's it. You can get your absentee ballot the same day or not. You got to go vote at your polling location. If you're registered to vote, if you are registered to vote, you have to go to your precinct and your polling location to do a regular vote. It's not going to be an absentee vote. So same day voting is voting in person. When it becomes absentee is when you are registering to vote at, when you're registering to vote on election day. That's when you're going to go not to your polling location, but to your clerk's office. And I believe that's considered absentee voting, but it's still voting in person. So if election day, everybody has to vote in person, period. Have to vote in person. So hopefully that was helpful, Sarah. I kind of confused myself a little bit with it, but voting on election day is voting in person, not absentee technically.
Yeah, and I just want to reiterate, you know, what you're saying, Lacey, because I know that people with disabilities are, you know, 20% of the population.
Wow.
And so, you know, there's, you know, 1 in 5 has a disability. So there's a lot of us, and there are, you know, a lot of issues that, of course, you know, that we go through, you know, as people with disabilities that we have to, you know, put an account for and hold. You know, one of the ways we can hold our politicians, you know, both parties accountable is, you know, by voting, you know, for who's going to, you know, support me, you know, and so, and my values and things like that. So, you know, one of the ways to let your voice be heard is by, you know, by voting. And so you just want to encourage, like what Lacey said, you know, get out there, let people know your rights, you know, as a person with a disability. You know, I'm here, Lacey here, you know, we here to, you know, support you and let you know what your rights are. And come November 3rd, even, you know, before that, you know, let's get this done. Let our voices be heard. And I found one of the answers to my questions, which is what is the deadline to register online? And it says for the Michigan website, State Michigan website is Monday, October 19th. So
Wow.
that's the register to deadline to register.
15 days, like Cindy was saying. Yeah. Okay.
Yes. So that's the answer. And also, I want to say, and you can confirm, Lacey, but based on my understanding, that you have to vote. You know, it's a straight party ticket, so you have to vote for either party. If you don't, then you will spoil your ballot.
Yeah. Yeah. You can't vote both straight party and then for individual people. If you vote straight party, you're done. You don't have to, unless you're doing judges and all that kind of local stuff. But if you vote straight party and then vote for an individual who's in that party, you spoil your ballot. They're going to give you another one. You got to fill it out again. You spoil it again and give you another one. So vote straight ticket. Just know that you voted for everybody under that party, Democratic or Republican.
Yeah.
All right. I have a couple of questions. So what is the best way? We do all of this organizing, you know, with young people and senior citizens and African Americans, and we do all this organizing. What is the best way to organize and to get information out? What advice would you, or what would you want to see done differently to make certain that the community is taken care of? The disability community is taken care of. Are there any requests?
And again, you can type your comments into the chat box, or you can raise your hand and we will allow you to talk.
This is Mary. I would just ask if you guys are available to do some additional trainings. Periodically, I get requests on many issues related, or many topics related to people with IDD, and voting obviously this year in particular has been a high demand. So if you'd be willing to do some additional trainings.
Anytime, just reach out and we'll get it on the calendar. Well, I follow Tamika's lead, so she'll tell me what to do, but whatever Tamika says.
Sounds good. We have one more comment in the chat box. Sharon Hall indicates just continue to work with people in the community. Cindy indicates you can split your ticket in the presidential election, but not the primary. If you vote straight ticket, you can't go back and split your vote. Is this correct?
Okay, I'm confused by the question. My understanding is that you cannot vote straight ticket and then go and vote for an individual outside of that party or inside of the party, because you would have initially voted for that individual twice. They get your vote when you vote straight ticket. So if me and Tamika are under the same umbrella, we have our own party, and you vote straight ticket, and then you see my name again, you see my name up under, and you vote for me again, I would have gotten 2 votes from you. You can't do that. You can either vote straight ticket or vote individual. I always vote individual. I never vote straight ticket. That's my personal preference, but you can't do both. And you can go back and get your, they would have you would have spoiled your ballot. They're not going to even put it in the machine, or the machine will spit it out. Cindy, if that makes sense. But I will again check into that, and we will create that guide. Hopefully we can get it in the next 2 weeks, Tamika, and get it to the community, so that all of these questions that were presented, and you all are recording this, we'll get a copy of the video so I can make sure we cover all of the questions that were asked and do our due diligence in getting the correct information to folks.
Okay, Cindy added to the chat box. Okay, you got the question right. That is what I meant. Thank you much.
Okay, thanks, Cindy. Sometimes I get a little confused. It's a lot of minutia. But if there are suggestions, if you have different ways, different networks that are able to get this information out, you know, I am, and I want to make sure I'm saying things right. Tamika's coaching me on, you know, I'm not in the disabled community. So I live a different life in a different reality. It's a lot of communities that I'm not in, and I'm learning. So help me learn and also get for the community what is needed. When I'm in spaces, I'm an ally. I need to fight for. So what do I need to fight for? I know what I need to fight for as an African-American woman, but I don't know everything for everything. So let us know. So when we're in spaces, we can get it. I was talking to a gentleman, and he's blind, and he was like, we need stuff in Braille, and nobody invites us to the doggone table, not just to our own individual community's table, but I need to be sitting at the table where everybody's making the decisions. How do I get in there? And I'm like, you doggone right. We need everybody represented at the table. And when I'm at the table, if I can't get you in, I'm fighting. to get you in, I want to make certain that I'm saying the right things. So let us know. Send any ideas you have. Let's make this change. This is crucial. And I'm glad that you are part of the team and that we can get it done.
Okay, we have one hand raised and one other question and about 4 minutes left. The question is, isn't it required to vote straight ticket in primary election or not?
It is, in primary it is. Yeah.
Okay.
That's where people got it messed up, because they would do both.
Okay, and then we have one hand raised. Karen, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and unmute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, and ask your question, please.
Okay. I hate to go off topic, but this isn't really a voting question, but it's about this nice webinar for ACLU and the public. Have you guys ever considered doing one of these maybe 4 times a year to deal with discrimination at courts or probate courts in regard to how the disabled people, whether it's mental or physical, kind of don't get our rights looked after in a lot of situations? And I know the Disabled Network of Northern Michigan, the Community Mental Health in Emmett County, and the Northwest Michigan Action Agency are all trying very hard to support folks like us that maybe don't get our rights looked after unless you have a lot of money for attorneys, which I have already spent over $100,000 on attorneys since the year 2000 on issues having to do with my 4 children and my rights not getting looked after as a bipolar mother, even though I have the backing of my psych doctors, physical doctors, teachers, coaches, CMH workers, and DHS workers. There seems to be a disconnect in a lot of the court hearings. If just because you happen to be bipolar, all of a sudden they assume you're a bad mother. And I just wondered, I might not be the only one, obviously, and I've seen a lot of problems with, lots of stuff like restaurants not having handicapped bathrooms, and there's a litany of problems with the disabled in Michigan, and wondered if this kind of forum to get the problems open and out in the air with folks like you directly versus having to send letters through the mail and hope that our mail gets opened at the ACLU or the NAMA, the National Alliance of Mental Illness. There's a lot of great support things, but it seems like everything falls through the cracks.
Yeah, and that's a big issue. So I just started with the ACLU in March. I will say that what I have seen, they have an intake process for folks who have concerns and issues and need assistance with different cases and different litigation. That normally, the reason I know it doesn't fall through the cracks is the person that does the intake then assigns an attorney to look at it, and then will call and say whether or not they can take the case. I have said to the ACLU in Michigan, I think they do some great work. I'm in some of the briefings and some of the staff meetings is talking about all the stuff that they're doing. And I didn't know before I got there all of the work that these attorneys were doing. So they're doing some phenomenal stuff. It's a limited amount of staff, but they are kicking butt and trying to win on a bunch of cases. So in your instance, I would say reach out, put in an application for assistance. For them to understand and know the issue that was happening, and for them to potentially take it up. But they will definitely contact you and definitely walk you through the yes or no or what needs to happen to move it forward, for sure. And if you have my email address, if you want more information, I can contact our admin department and get you the application or the intake form, I should say. To try to move that process.
So I had 2 different cases opened at the Civil Rights Department in Lansing, and those workers knew it was a serious problem and asked me to give them, 2 feet worth of files. And because I'm also executive dysfunction and ADD and bipolar and dyslexic, I was unable to pull all that information together, act like my own lawyer, get it all copied and get it down to them in time. And then they, the time ran out on that file for the civil rights complaints against the school and against the court and the police department in my town. And it all fell through the cracks just because I wasn't able, because of my disabilities, to give them the tools and the paperwork they needed to carry on with my case. And it was really frustrating.
Wow. Again, take my email down. I can put it in the chat again, and I can, if nothing else, I can ask some questions. And
okay, thank you. I just thought that a forum like this a couple times a year for folks to have a ability to talk right to y'all could bring a lot of things to light of the issues that are going on in certain townships or counties or cities.
Yeah, and I know they do it for the returning citizens. They do a lot of that with their People Power tours. So we can consider it for sure.
Okay, we're at 12:30. Tracy, do you want to go ahead and close out the meeting? We'll make sure that Lacey has put in the chat box contact information. So Karen, that would be the email that you would want to send your request to.
Okay, I only got Dawson dot, I didn't get the rest.
Dawson at
L Dawson, LDN.
I'm sorry, L Dawson at ACLU Mish, as if it's all one word, .org.
Okay. Thank you.
L Dawson at ACLUMish.org.
And don't forget to make us. That's my boss for real.
All right, and that appears in the chat box as well. Tracy, are you ready to close out?
Yes. So just as a reminder, today's recording along with the PowerPoint slides will be posted at MyDDI's website, and I have included that link into the chat box. And I just want to say thank you so much to Lacey and Tamika for providing such important information on voting. We really appreciate your time and all of the information that you provided. So thank you again.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. All right, so that concludes today's webinar. And I just want to thank you I want to send a thank you to all of the attendees as well. All right, goodbye.
Thank you for this is awesome.
Bye, everybody.